hope they show up. That's all I can ask. We've asked a lot of people.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
We did a lot of work.
We did the same thing.
Channel 3 News is going to be here for the TV, so we're going to get that.
Yeah. But see, to a degree, it's not so much how many show up, it's the content of what the few have to say. That's what's important.
Hey, we're streaming right now, so fair warning.
Oh, we live? Great.
Yeah,
I just turned it on.
Okay.
I wouldn't want you to say something you don't want everybody to hear.
Oh, I want them to hear it. It's time to burn this mother down.
Oh, I agree with you.
So,
Facebooking this is a pretty good idea.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then we get a recording of it, that'd be good.
People all over the country are upset about the property taxes.
Well, the only thing that is ever going to work is consolidation.
Yes.
Not only the schools.
Everything.
You got to cut it down. It's the same thing with police pensions and the fire pensions. The only thing that I think that buys some time is somebody to go back to the bargaining table and help fix that, because they can't just be on a splurge to do whatever the hell they want, because if you don't have refunds,
Right.
it won't be fixed.
Well, the whole state have to be reformed. And I know some of the folks up north may not like what I have to say.
Sorry, Doug, how you doing? I was on the phone yakking my mouth.
We have to tax
Good to see you, man, again.
retired income at a rate of $70,000 and up. If you look at 3% COLA for those folks. See, my thing, if we make it $69,000 down, you get the COLA. But the county, 3% COLA for those who's making $69,000. Once you hit 7, you don't get the COLA. Okay? It's got to be a cap. So see, that's another issue that the state has to deal with, because that's over here, but state officers. The point that has to be made about all this pension, if you are government worker, you get one pension. Now, if you move over to the county, your pension follows you. You don't get no separate pension. It follows you. And that's how it follows. You got all the men's leaders. He sits at home with 4 or 5 pensions that we all have. Then, when Commissioner Steele stepped into the chairmanship of the county, she sat there long enough to get the pension of the county president. That's the way the system is set up. Okay? So, these officials have created a system that have come back like everybody else. All these thousands of units of government, 7,000. How many people actually pay attention to all this?
Well, I think it's such an animal, and without some type of, I can show you a thing. If you leave it like this in the next 10 years, if you extrapolate the numbers, what are you going to have? If it stays that it's gaining, but let's just say it stays at the rate that it's sitting right now, what are we doing?
You won't have
Blight. You'll have blighted areas. You'll have nobody there. You'll have school districts. You'll have some things. Kids are. We won't have to get as many children because of people restrictions. It's true.
And we don't tell, we saw, and put our family lives on with the police ain't protected. And we tell, we told, then why don't you snitch? So they
I'm saddened that we're at the juncture of
But
encouraging.
this is not quite sure. I figured it would be all phone conferencing, so this is pretty awesome. I saw you walking in, I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
And see, I didn't know. Everybody here, a situation all the time.
My God.
I was
They
working.
saw us. They saw us hugging.
And I remember when they went out
We could hug.
dealing with their pension. That was happening. I didn't know.
It's a coincidence. It's a coincidence. He not gonna tell his counterpart. He's gonna tell my friend was my shot, my friend. It's a lawless community. So
Well, that's good.
they're loyal to me.
Oh, that's good. The more,
That's not the way he writes.
oh, he writes this way.
We were, I don't like anything at all. But this really
Gotta keep him outside. We'll get that. So he doesn't. They don't show up.
Absolutely. It's all about the brain.
So this thing about
the people that live here and
Yeah. And we got to put an end to pit the north up north against the south. Got to put an end to that.
there ain't no north or south.
Thank
Me,
you.
baby, I love you as much as I love my
Absolutely.
That's a way to I probably love you more for sure.
we call it and we can keep
I know.
I tell it like this. You don't get better than I tell it like this. I don't think people are as engaged in what we are. I wish they were just half as engaged as people. The other thing is the other thing that we talk. Oh, yes, but that's the other side of it.
The crowd is God.
We
The crowd is God. The people
keep
come
it
outside.
happy. Everybody thinks it's okay.
no.
Kind of what.
There's no way to turn down in Chicago. We got 30,000 black churches and it's held there.
That's what, Lakeita, we need to have folks sign in.
Okay, now I am
And
supposed
so
to take the
we got 300 churches.
and I
Okay.
So think
And plus they take,
churches
they streaming it live
in Delaware right
over there too.
I'm just making sure
now. And we don't own nothing.
All right, well,
until we sign
The churches don't
hey, Rob,
There's 300
you got folks on the table that you sign in and.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, you're doing good.
So here's 300 churches. That's what I grew up.
I tell you.
They're millions and millions.
5 days a week I am across the street.
We don't own no stores other than a hair shop. All the businesses are white owned. And everybody on the kid, 300 churches in one community, all of that. Totally love God. That means you asked me to choose. They only have one. Where preaching go? I think people that love. Now, there's a,
That comes
that doesn't say that.
That's what I thought.
Sometimes the churches do good work, but their problem is
I just texted to see if she's still looking to do that instead of that live stream that I'm waiting for.
Okay.
the church, right? We get together. There's no peace. They're doing everything for people. Because they won't get together. So Baptist,
You're matter of fact,
so are you sure?
they can put that stand and then another. Or,
Yeah. The thing is, y'all have some accountability back in But they got rules.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
How you with I doing?
Yes, Lisa Graham.
Yeah, Trustee Charles.
That's not so funny. They took away our religion. Took away our religion. They stripped our religion out. They gave us all. And then they took all of it. It's a different invitation. That's all. And I'm not talking
How you doing, Mayor?
Fine, fine, fine.
Hey, how are you? Wanted to come greet you.
Yes, good to see you. That's the problem.
How you doing? How you doing? Since I wasn't with you.
Oh, as my day started, I was with the doctor this morning.
Did you stop it for me?
No, I didn't.
Hey, Jay. How you doing, sir?
Representative James Thomas. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. My friend, Kurt Gallen. Nice to meet you. He's really good at coordinating and running things. I'm sorry.
I'm Jennifer. I'm from
Yes,
Channel
sir.
3.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you're from Channel 3. Okay.
Down.
I wanted to ask you.
those are rough, but I'm sorry, man. I'm just we were catching up on old stuff last time. We didn't follow.
So wait, do they have any wives?
Something with flowers and tax.
And I understand. Did you want to give public comment?
Yeah, we should sign up. Anthony, these are,
I am
help organize
staffing
and run
for
this thing.
Representative Flowers this evening. So at the very back, there is a sign-in sheet. If you want to provide public comment, if you could sign in, that would be great.
Technically, this is her meeting.
It just helps know where we're at and in what order.
Right.
And if we call your name and you changed your mind, that's
You
fine.
run the mic.
Yeah.
You loud and cool, you know.
well, we have an introduction before the thing. I'd like to give a plug to the donations.
I just laid it at the back
Your
table.
little mark.
I'm just here to kind of make sure that
Are you
she has what she needs. And I have a call-in number if other state reps want to call in so they can participate. So I do just kind of that back and forth for her.
They donated 650 chairs set up.
Well, what we
take
need
down
to do is hear from you.
sound system.
Not for me, from them.
Well, you
Yeah.
get something.
No, I'm not here for that.
Part of the deal.
Well, I'll
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
What they, that's very important. I go on, it's going to help drive that reflection that we need.
Like the haircut, man. Like the haircut.
Which one?
If there's people that don't sign up, we still, that's why I want to make sure that we still do that.
Right, yes.
And you want me to pass the mic?
Yeah, put everything down there.
I'm gonna steal this idea. We're gonna do them all town. If it don't go great, do like they did, drive my truck.
You need to come in.
There you go.
Nobody gets
Now, I
it.
wish we had a mic out in the audience for the people.
So we got Revis here.
That I don't think. I think maybe that's what it is.
Is there any way to find out? Because the public didn't like it. Yeah, we can do that, Jay. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, because matter of fact, he's filming, streaming it live.
Yes.
Shit, they can come up so that they can get on Facebook Live. People need to see who's talking, because you don't got other than TV camera. But the point, because we want to make this, that it ain't about hobby show. It's about personal what they have to say. There you go. Yes. And you do it right in front of the camera. Right.
Another microphone. We only had
Drive down.
Oh, great. We got a fantastic drive. I mean, we got down here just like that.
Much construction.
No. It's quick. And see, when we came down here the first time, there was an accident. So we had to take the back roads to get here.
We got plenty of that.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
Did you work on that piece dealing with the self-evaluation?
I'm gonna
Because Reem and I was on the phone.
I plan on talking about it, but what I wanted to do was
How you doing, sir?
Baseball was a client.
I think your babies. That's no problem.
there's nothing.
A ver. A ver. Reed, excuse me, you come over here.
It's a good idea, isn't it? Huh? It's a good idea, isn't it?
We need to have a conversation about the holding down accessory fees that was on the phone. Okay? James looked at the 33 factory assessment, right? The formula is very high. That's one aspect.
Just the formula. I'm now talking about this is short term. Here's what people are scared. So here's here. Right now.
young and beautiful. All of the roads.
How are you?
Another day. It's the, well, it's baseball. 2 games tonight. And then, well, Cardinals are on the, kind of like the dead birds, because if they lose tonight, it's over. And then Yankees playing again tonight. So there's 2 games. So it's probably a lot more interesting than what this is going to be. Who do you follow? Yeah, I do too, but there's some real issues there too.
And we need more than just her.
Kind of boring, isn't it? I mean, the only thing that's worse is when it's about 90 degrees and the sun's hitting you and you're sitting there baking like a boiled egg on a bad day. Yeah, I like that. Are you with the Department of Revenue? Well, there's a lot of things to talk about. I've made a couple of trips up there to the ice building. The ice building's one of those beautiful buildings. I really enjoy it, but it's not so warm and friendly. I didn't feel like it was a friendly place to be.
Do you think there really is agencies that are doing it?
I think that the situation of people, no matter what walk of life or what you're doing, there should be a certain amount of reverence and respect for what you do when you go into a place, because indirectly I help make those jobs possible. And the point is, it's kind of cold and not real warm and fuzzy. And that tells me that there's issues that need to be worked out, because no matter who you are or where you come from, whether you have a name or not, somebody owes you the respect. I didn't get it. Well, no, and the point is, if I had a chance to look at the agency director in the face, I'd be honest to tell them what I felt. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And a lot of it is, it's a political football, and we live within a great big sphere of political football. But I was amazed how beautiful the building was. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's great that she came down here too. I appreciate that. I appreciate that because our legislator isn't a writer. He needs to. No, I'm telling you, he needs to. When you don't even pick up the people, when the people need you, you need to retire. It's okay, we're all different. I'm glad you brought I went to candidate school in Alabama. Yeah, that's true.
On the table.
Well, I don't know who else is
Let's see. That's why.
And the also on the other table.
We know Representative Mary Flowers. The lady from the IGC, lady from
the guy from Iroquois that handed us that. I guess he's got a whole fraud case up in Lake County.
What's that?
Are you broadcasting?
Yeah.
Then I'll hold that conversation.
Hold on a minute. She can tell you. Kirk, would you answer this lady's question?
Yes, ma'am.
One of them one more. What 3 sites are you broadcasting? Our website.
Our website, that's ours.
Okay, I thought it was her.
This is what.
Mary Flowers. I've heard some things about you.
What have you heard?
Oh, I don't know.
You did make it.
I don't know if I could repeat all that.
What did we just go for?
My daughter went to ag school, so what did you do?
There are?
That's how the stocks got started. That's how the stocks got started.
Well, it's sustained itself. When they keep taking 3 and 5 slots, every day the contracts.
But see, some of these issues, you're gonna have to raise here. Okay? They have to be raised. Well, we know what it started in 1940. No. Yeah, but that's why it's so important that we take the time. There was times for people making $70,000
Okay.
About ready?
We have Representative Tom Morrison on the call with us.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody in the back hear me? We're going to go ahead and get started. I've got 6:30. We're going to do a quick pledge, and then we're going to pass off the mic for introductions. So if I could have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, face the Capitol. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anthony, would you like to do some introductions?
Good evening, everyone. And as I would say, welcome to our side of the country, Cole County. Well, I hope tonight that we can bridge some gaps and bring the family together. Because, folks, we live in one Illinois, one agape, by the power of the people. That is our new campaign. We must come together. Our state is in serious trouble, and ain't only our state, it's New Jersey, it's Nebraska. Every other state in our union have problems with property taxes, and that's why we're here, to work together to resolve this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you a state representative who could have had this hearing in Chicago at the state building, Governor Thompson building. But she chose to break ranks with her colleagues and come to the public. And we thank her for that. This meeting, this hearing is for you. It's for you. Representative Mary Flowers.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Mary Flowers, and it's been my pleasure to serve in the Illinois House of Representatives for the last 35 years. And the purpose of us being here tonight is because our taxes is too high. Not the city of Chicago, not the county of Cook, but the entire state of Illinois. So without any further ado, I'll begin with a roll call. The Property Tax Release Task Force will come to order, and I will begin by calling the roll. Representative LaToya Greenwood, Representative LaShawn Ford, Representative Marcus Evans, Representative Tom Morrison. He's on the line. Tom, can you say here? Here. Thank you, Tom. Representative Sam Yingling, Representative Delia Rivas, Representative Lamont Robinson, Senator Christopher Belt, and Senator Robert Peters. And I have two of my other colleagues in the rear, and I would appreciate if they would join me at the table. Representative Willauer and Representative Bailey, would you please come to the table if you would like? Oh, and Representative Caucus, please come to the table. And thank you very much for coming out tonight. While they're coming to the table, I would like to thank the concerned taxpayers of Coles County for inviting us here tonight. More importantly, I want to thank Governor Prister. This is Governor Prister's Property Tax Release Task Force, and it is the law, and is pursuant to Public Act 101-0181. The Property Tax Release Task Force is created to utilize a racial and economic lens to identify the causes of increasingly burdensome property taxes across Illinois, to review best practices in public policy strategies, to make recommendations to assist in the development of administration, electoral, legislative changes as needed to create short-term and long-term changes to relieve the property owners of the state of Illinois. That's the purpose of me being here, to relieve the property owners of the state of Illinois. So, without any further ado, I would like to have a few comments from my colleagues. And once again, thank you all very much for joining me.
Thank you, Representative Flowers. This is probably the first time that the Republicans have more members here than Democrats. Can we take a vote?
No. Not tonight.
Not tonight. Oh, darn it. I'm Dan Calkins from Decatur, and I represent the 101st House District, which includes part of Macon County, DeWitt, Piatt, a little bit of McLean, and a little bit of Champaign County. And I'm here. I'm the first term rep. I've only been in office since January. And we work very closely with Representative Flowers on several things in Springfield. Contrary to the news, we have a lot of things that we agree on. Unfortunately, things that we may not agree on are what makes the news, and that is unfortunate. So thank you very much for including us tonight, and it's really a pleasure to have you down here, and appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, Representative Flowers, thanks for the invite. I wasn't expecting to come up here tonight, so hopefully I've got some profound wisdom to impart. But we appreciate you coming down here and making the time for this. Wish more of the colleagues could be down here, but it is what it is. I'm Representative Blaine Wilhar. I'm also in my first term as a state legislator. I represent the 107th District. My hometown is St. Elmo, which is about an hour south of here, I guess. I represent Effingham counties, most of Effingham County, Fayette County, Bond County, Marion County, and a little bit of Clinton County. And, you know, everywhere that we've gone, the whole time we've been campaigning, the whole time we've been in the legislature, there's one thing that, you know, everybody agrees on: property taxes are out of control in the state of Illinois. You know, but until Springfield decides that they're going to tackle some big issues, this driving our costs and ultimately passing this property tax problem on to our local governments, nothing gets better. So we appreciate your commitment on being out here tonight to hopefully voice your concerns and, you know, maybe throw out some solutions and some encouragement for our legislators that aren't from this area and don't exactly understand everything that we go through in our part of the state. So again, I just mostly appreciate you folks for making the time to come out here and be involved, because that's what it's all about. I really appreciate it.
Good evening, and thank you so much for being here. State Representative Darren Bailey. I represent the 109th District. Starts about 30 minutes south of here and runs all the way down to Mount Carmel, and the whole butts up to the Indiana border the entire way. So I've also thrown my hat into the ring for the 55th Senate District. And I'm a first-time representative as well. I'm a farmer from Clay County. I've served on the school board locally. And yes, we have Representative Flowers. We're honored that she is here tonight. I'm thrilled that she took the time to come here. I reminded her that she's only in central Illinois. She hasn't made it to southern Illinois yet. So she's promised to come back. And she's got a room when she does come back, as well as any other representative north of here or anywhere in the state does as well. So I want to show the dirt roads, the gravel roads, that you get south of here and things become a lot more desperate. You guys, Coles County is obviously the economic and the power engine for the 55th Senate District. But things get a little tighter as we get further south down here, so we have to address our issues here in Illinois, and hopefully this is a beginning step to do this. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Representative Flowers.
I still say we need to vote.
We'll vote, I promise you. Just follow my lead. I'm going to pass the mic, please.
Hi, I'm Rob Perry. I'm a lifelong resident here in Coles County. 3 years of hard work and discovery and understanding, and I want to share a kind of a situation, and this is for the representatives to listen to. We were at the first meeting in Springfield, and for the property tax meeting. And from a standpoint of being a citizen and not a representative or somebody that's actually part of the making the decisions, I want to share with you what come off at the end of the meeting as we were leaving the meeting. The first thing that I was kind of dismayed because I didn't think, first and foremost, people came into that meeting late. We were there at 1 promptly, and we had people coming and going for the first 30 minutes of the meeting. I didn't understand why that happened, but at the end of the whole thing, as we were talking to representatives. One of the representatives, while he was getting on the elevator, says, we got a problem. He says, we don't have the majority. And he slips into the elevator. And the thing that really just galled at me, this is not about party, folks. It's about people. It's about what's wrong. It doesn't matter what party you're at. If you're looking at this and knowing what's going on in this state and how bad it is, and it's bad enough, I don't want to hear about party. What I want to hear about is unity. I want solutions. That's what's wrong. Quit talking about the party part and get down to business. Take care of the people. The people will respect you more if you take care of us. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, I'm James Donasso. I am with the Concerned Taxpayers of Coles County. I am a resident of Coles County and have been for the past 35 years. I can't believe I've been here that long. I'm originally from Cook County. I was born and raised up there. And so I was educated up there. I still own a home up there. A majority of my family still lives up there. So I kind of have a unique perspective of what life is like in the north, to live in the northern part of the state, in the largest county, populated county, and then down in a more rural county. So very unique perspective. When I first came here, I came here as a 19-year-old young man to attend Eastern Illinois University, which I did. I received my undergraduate and graduate degree from Eastern Illinois University. But I learned quite a bit about the more rural lifestyle. I have to admit, I was a city kid down here, and I was out of my element. And if I saw another corn cob, I wanted to run for my life. That's how I felt. But I eventually fell in love with the place, and it was the people that sold me on this place, and I decided to make my home here. And now my family's down here. So I'm just glad to. Maybe I'm not a native, but I'm glad to be able to share my perspective and hopefully offer up some solutions. I agree with what Rob said. We've been fortunate enough to be introduced to Anthony Travis and his group from Chicago, and we've really have formed a friendship that is kind of crossed racial, socioeconomic, northern, southern, all kinds of barriers have been broken down, and it's amazing when you put those things aside what people can accomplish if they have a common goal. We may not always agree on everything. However, we do agree that the system needs fixing and that the people need to contribute to that and come up with some solutions instead of just calling out the problem. So I'm glad to be here tonight, and I want to thank the representative for allowing us to have a small voice in this. Thank you. That's an intro. That sounded southern to me.
It is southern.
Are you sure you're from Cook County?
Unfortunately, I am. But my name is Anthony Travis, and I'm known as the tax doctor because for the past 2 and a half years, I have been going around the state educating folks about the property taxes. And in that endeavor, I was sitting in my office trying to figure out what is going on in the rest of the state. So I saw on the internet these two men, Rob and James, filing a lawsuit against their county because of taxes. So what I did, I called down here to the Chamber of Commerce, trying to find out who is these guys. So they gave me their phone number. I called them up, and we hit it off. And we've been good friends, or like brothers. They came up to Chicago and gave an excellent report on what's going on down here in this part of the woods. And then Reuben and I came down here and we spoke at the county board. And me talking to the county board went viral. Okay, so everybody around the country saw it. But the good thing is this. As Rob pointed out, folks, this is not a black, white, Republican, Democratic issue. It is a green issue. Money. It's about money. It's about how we're going to pay for the things of the state and who's going to help pay for these things. I am a former trustee from the village of Maywood. If I learned anything about being on that board for 8 years, I learned one thing. Government costs money. Your inlets, your outlets, your curbs, your gutters, your streets, your alleys, and your new lightings. All that stuff has to be paid for. And whose job is to pay for it? It's ours. It's ours. But we also have to keep in mind, you can only raise property taxes to a point. And folks, we're at that point. Let me give you let me say this first. Our new campaign is One Illinois, One Agape, powered by the people. We at the Agape Research recommend that we use consolidation as a blueprint to cut government down. And that's coming from the tax doctor. Folks, in case you don't know, this state have 7,000, you know what, I don't even need this. This government, this state, we have 7,000 units of government. We got more units of government than any state in our union. I think Texas is right behind us. Folks, the next big issue is the school districts. In 1940, we had 12,000 school districts. And somewhere along the line, the General Assembly saw fit to cut that down to 856. Even with the 856, we're wasting $1 billion a year on administrative costs. Also, we found out we have 9,000 administrators at $100,000 each, $1.3 million in pension package. We have superintendents. Hear this, folks. And under the law, all you need is one school. A superintendent can make $160,000 up to $400,000. And all you got to do is have one school. That's the law. Folks, when you look at what done went wrong, we got superintendents on pace to make $2 million to $8 million in their pension plan that we have to pay. We had a superintendent way up north. His pension is $360,000. Then we had a school district in Calumet Park. That superintendent was about to walk away with $700,000. They found out that he was doing some bad math, and he ended up getting fired. But folks, nothing is going to change unless all of us, as Rob and James pointed out, folks, we got to put aside our racial difference, our economic difference, and our political party difference. Because it ain't about us no more, it's about our children. If we don't change, and we're the adults, we are the adults, we have to act like adults. We got to make some hard decisions, but that's our job. Our children, their children, and their children's children want to know, as adults, what are we going to do to fix this crisis? And there's another issue that happened about 3, maybe 4 days ago. The Governor Task Force on the pension crisis came out with their solution. I read the solution that they recommended to the governor, and it's wonderful. Folks, that word consolidation is going to have to become part of our vocabulary. We're going to have to eat and sleep that word till we get the changes in this state that we need. Now, I want to turn it over to our MC, because we're here to hear from you. That's why we're here, to hear from you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. One of the goals tonight is to be able to get input from everybody. There were some cards in the back of the room. If you didn't get one, that's okay. We can get you a card. You can write your question out, or you can come up here and present your questions. There's one thing that we want to focus on is not just what the problem is or what you folks perceive as the problem, but we also want to know, do you have suggestions for the solutions? And that's the best part of brainstorming. Put everything goes on the table, and then you filter through it and determine what's going to be the best course of action, and that's what this committee is all about. So the more input you can give them, the more they can take back to Springfield to help us. And that's kind of the goal with tonight. Before I get started into that, I do want to thank Rural King. They're a local business here in Coles County. In fact, they're all over several counties, but they set this up tonight for this meeting to take place. They didn't charge us for this. They used their people to set this up, and they'll use their people to tear this down. And that's what local business does to try to keep business here. And I believe Rural King bought this whole mall facility when businesses left. You know, they are an economic machine here, and we'd like to keep them. And that's going to be tough to do with the way things are with property taxes. So that's my plug for Rural King. They deserve a big thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from anybody? Anybody that would like to step up and either pass up a card or make a comment? Would you like to come up, sir? The microphone won't go past this point, so.
Yes.
If you would, just introduce your name for the record, and then we'll give you the mic.
My name is James Cleary.
You can come up here.
I do have a couple of questions, but that wasn't the reason that I'm here. It was to comply with your request for input. And
you've got some input that you've put together.
I I make $10 an hour.
Go ahead and come on up.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I make $10 an hour being a part-time township assessor up in Iroquois County.
Go ahead and talk into the mic.
And,
You on camera, turn around, you.
yeah, I
You
guess
on the camera.
okay, yeah. I got to get my stage presence going here. Pardon my ineptness. But, oh, great. I grew up in the streets of Chicago after World War II with a single mom, and bounced around and got an engineering and architect degree from U of I, and started my own architect engineer practice up in Will County, and used to go to a township meeting. Every once in a while, and the township supervisor said, "Hey Jim, you've got some math experience, and you design buildings, and you know what buildings cost. We've got a township assessor that doesn't put anything on the books."
Say that again.
Louder, please.
Said, and he's just an old guy, but and everybody loves the heck out of him, but we don't have any assessed valuation because nobody's taxes get going over on a regular basis, and if you know the guy real well, your parcel doesn't even have to be on the books, So I said, well, yeah, I'd like to try it out. I didn't know anything about tax assessing and that, and so I've got 50 years behind me being a certified Illinois assessing official. I was president of the Will County Assessors Association for a period of time up in the collar counties. I'm also over the years, I got into the field of being a forensic investigator. So I teamed up the forensic investigator interest with actually researching the real estate property tax system in Illinois. And over the years, I not only belong to the Illinois Assessors Association, but I found a new group that started many years ago, and it's an international group called the International Association of Assessing Officials. And they've been recognized here by the state of Illinois to actually give assessor classes along with the Department of Revenue. A very good group that just formed an Illinois chapter here about a year and a half ago. I wanted to give the board what I considered a very initial overview of really what's going on in the state of Illinois as far as assessments are concerned. Although a number of years back, I did follow the local events taking place here with you guys. But the presentation that I have here not only has a text, but I also give aerial photos, copies of newspaper publications, and documents. And if possible, what I'd like to do is just briefly, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but, and then for the audience, I'd like to show you, that's great. I'd actually like to show the audience some of these exhibits, and now you may think, or I may, I want to explain that This is a document that sort of highlights the area of the state of Illinois that I'm in. But I also have a township assessor associate up in Lake County that allowed me to include one of her memos to me over the years. What the deal is, and it was fortunate that the people down here in central Illinois picked up on it a couple of years ago, is that the main problem with the way these taxes have risen for all of us that are paying taxes is that the system is set up in Illinois, and it took me a number of years to figure it out, because the Illinois Department of Revenue Property Tax Division has really no legislative authority to require any assessor to comply with professional standards, has no legal authority to require a chief assessment officer for the county to put omitted properties onto the books. And being an assessor, township assessor for 16 years up in the collar counties, I never had to address that problem, because up there it appeared that everybody was doing a fairly good job. But when I retired down to central Illinois, and the township board asked me if I would be a township assessor in Iroquois County, because again, nothing was getting put on the books. And I said, sure. Well, and then over the years, I found that the system's broken, you know, but nobody really wants to admit it, or at least nobody on my side of the fence, being an elected official, being a township assessor. But it's come to a point where we all have to admit it. And what the deal is, and I've got it documented in my report here, and I've had personal experience with some of the communities, that the supervisor of assessments or the chief assessment officers, most of them do a fairly good job, but the problem is they don't have any, they don't have the proper salary or budgets as do the local township assessors. They don't have, there are some township assessors in Illinois where the township board refuses to give them a salary. And this can be done because the way the state statutes are set up is that the legislation says the township board will decide what the compensation to the township assessor is going to be. And that's where the problem starts, because many township boards in rural Illinois really don't like the assessor coming around and looking at their building. They do put the dogs out on the assessor. I don't know how, we had a case up in Iroquois County, I don't know what the decision was, but it's a twofold problem. The jurisdictions that have the authority to fund the assessment system in Illinois don't want to fund it properly. And that's why I included the International Association of Assessors guidelines that actually show, excuse me, that Illinois provides budgets to their assessor offices at 25% to 50% less than what's appropriate through a survey that was done through the United States and Canada by this international association. So you got a twofold situation. Nobody wants to pay to have a proper stuff done. And the main reason that all of the taxes are being increased is, and I did the math on it, and I documented it with various situations, but every year throughout the state of Illinois, it's estimated that a minimum of $3 billion of property tax is not put on the books. Now, if new property, and I've even got documentation in here in one of my areas where at the top of the page there's a duplex building, and at the bottom of the page there's a duplex building. For some reason, the one on the top of the page, it was a duplex building that was built a number of years ago. But anyway, for some reason or other, the Board of Review for the county in 2005 took that duplex building off the tax books. So from 2005 to 2019, the owner of that duplex has only been paying $280 a year. So the question is, well, who pays the other $3,500 or to $5,500 of real estate taxes for those units for a year? And what we've done is, and we've calculated this for the areas outside of Cook County and major cities around the state of Illinois. But it's so for this building being off the books and a number of other buildings being off the books, each household in this village, a small village, 1,600 people population, we computed that each one of the other households in that village then has to pay $126 a year more on their real estate taxes, because what happens is the taxing bodies have their levy for the amount of money they need. But if you've got 10% of the parcels in the state of Illinois that should be on the books and aren't, or have been removed through erroneous actions of the Board of Review, and this duplex is still off the books after the municipality demanded that it be put on the books. And what the problem is a county superintendent, a chief assessment officer, can tell everybody to go to hell, and there's no legal action that anybody can take against him. And I'd like the board here to follow up and do some research on the Lake County situation, where the president of the Assessors Association up there in Lake County gave me a memo to include in my report, where she documents that their Assessors Association and a number of the villages there fought in court against this supervisor of assessments up there. They spent over $86,000 of legal fees to get this guy out of there, and they couldn't do it. The judge that had the case before him said, well, I've gone through the state statutes, and if that guy doesn't want to put stuff on the books, or if he wants to take something off the books or whatever, that's his choice, you know. So what happened is they finally, through local community action group, they convinced the the chief assessment officer that maybe he should just retire. So whatever financial arrangement was made to get him out of there, they did it. They've got somebody new in there that they're very happy with now, and hopefully, but see, what happened here is all of us guys thought you local guys were just, one of, by yourselves, but you really weren't. It's like this all over the state of Illinois. Number one, you have to get rid of the people that don't want to participate in a fair and equitable system on taxation. So get rid of these chief assessment officers that think they're God and can decide who goes on the books and who doesn't. Get rid of them. But you got to have legislation to do that. The only thing the Illinois Department of Revenue can do is, they told me, well, we can go and talk to them. But the problem there is, when somebody from the Illinois Department of Revenue comes and talks to a chief assessment officer, the conversation goes something like this. Well, this guy, Jim, the township assessor and so, he gave us another call and, told us to, So in other words, everybody wants, in other words, even the state of Illinois wants to push the blame off on somebody else, that they're really the ones that are the troublemakers, and we're nice guys. I guess I probably took up most of the time.
No.
So
Good job. You're fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. To piggyback off one of his comments, one of the things that is a big challenge we've seen, and everywhere we've exposed very same things he's talking about, when people are elected, they're required to do their job. And civilly, as far as the assessments and all of those, there's all kinds of barriers that we run into. But one thing that a lot of folks have overlooked is your state's attorneys. Because when an elected official refuses to do their job, that's an act of official misconduct. And that can be prosecuted criminally, and that's why that statute was put in place. But we don't find people filing criminal complaints. We need to file more criminal complaints when they refuse to do their job. And maybe they'll start doing their job, and when prosecutors don't prosecute, then you can start getting new prosecutors. But you got to lay the foundation to do that. Thank you very much for your report. We will publish that report on our website. It'll be illinoisleaks.com. When we get it transferred over, we'll get all that published for everybody. Any other cards from anybody that want to move forward on questions? Anybody want to come up with any questions? If not, we're going to pass this on to the panel for some first-hand input on directly back what he had. Mr. Kraft.
John Kraft, Edgar County. One thing I noticed, it was probably 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, with property not being taxed, I was standing at the entrance to the dog pound with a county board member, and I said, oh, that's some pretty good looking corn over there. It was right next to a cornfield. He said, yeah, that belongs to the cemetery. I said, huh? So I left there and looked it up on the county's website, and they were not being charged taxes for that cornfield. Well, they are now. But the point is, it takes an individual. It was just a casual conversation. I did not know the cemetery owned that cornfield, and they leased it out to the farmer who was farming and getting money, and nobody paying taxes until I went and checked, and they were not paying taxes. We found several places like that. One where our local city was leasing out a large chunk of property in town to a business, and they weren't paying taxes. So we reported that. We filed some type of paper. It's been so long I can't remember it, but it was a letter to our chief assessment officer and to the Board of Review saying, hey, property X is not being taxed. It should be. Here's why. They did a hearing, concluded that, well, this business that's leasing the city property is doing a service for the county and the residents. I said, so is McDonald's and Walmart. But the Department of Revenue overrode the chief assessment officer and said, you know, they're a private business, they're leasing city property, they have to pay taxes on that property. So if you drive by some place that, you know, looks like it might belong to a municipality or a township or a school district, school districts have farmland, believe it or not, and some of them don't tax it and they lease it out. Some of them let 4-H groups, which is fine, use it to grow their 4-H, whatever their farm crops for school and for the organization, and that's fine because it's another nonprofit. And there was a school district in northern Illinois that had farmland. They bought farmland from an old couple, let them live in the house for no rent, let them lease the property, and then it went to a tax sale. Cook County sold it. The school district bought it back from Cook County when they didn't have to pay for it anyway, because if a leaseholder doesn't pay their taxes, it can't be sold if it's property that belongs to a local government. It can't be in a tax sale. But the school district paid money for it anyway. And let the people that didn't pay the taxes stay there and farm the land, only this time they did their lease different. They hired the two people to keep the noxious weeds off the farm ground by whatever means they felt they needed to keep it off, which was, you know, planting crops. So it happens all over the state. I know you're going to laugh when I said that, but unfortunately there are some ways to get property back on the rolls. If all else, you know, you can just publicize who's not paying taxes and let the public look at them when they walk down the street.
Thank you. I think the first gentleman referenced this from a forensic standpoint as a suggestion to the committee. A forensic, county by county, a forensic analysis of every property, because we find properties not on the rolls all the time, and 90% of the time it's political, because somebody knows somebody and they don't put it on the tax rolls. And the rest of you end up paying to fill that void. James, I know you're chomping at the bit, so I'm going to pass it on.
I don't know if I'm chomping. I want to say thanks. Is Mr. Claridge, did I say that right?
Yes.
Thank you. I look forward to reading this. Very informative. I made some notes that might add a little bit, maybe additional to the perspective that you brought, a little different perspective, but I totally agree. Those who are not on the tax rolls, that need to be on the tax rolls, that are not paying, cause all of us to pay more. And I understand through the eyes of an assessor that that's an important facet of making things fair and equitable. I wouldn't never disagree with that. I think there's some things, though, that I made a list of some things that I really think also contribute to the overall high property taxes in the state. One of them, I believe, and I would challenge anyone to say that what I'm saying is not true, but we have a conflict of interest with many people who are in government positions that have an interest of keeping the property taxes high because they benefit financially from it. And that's just a fact. And I'm not talking about assessors and people like that, or salaried or paid hourly to do their job. But when you get to the top of the pyramid, and this is common sense, I mean, if you have people at the top of our legislative body that make money off of the tax system, I don't think that's right. I think that's a conflict of interest, and I really believe at some point that has to be addressed. And I think this is something that resonates with all Illinoisans. This is not a political thing to me, because I'm independent. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I'm from Illinois and I don't like what's going on. So I'm speaking for myself as a citizen, and I know many people who have contacted our organization over the last 3 years have said, hey, something smells fishy in Denmark. So I think that needs to ultimately be addressed. Another thing, there's too many units of government. We do need to think about consolidation. And I think it's different in rural Illinois than it is in Cook County, where it's urban. I'm not going to speak on behalf of Cook County because I live in rural Illinois, but being from up there, do we need townships in urban areas like that? That's a question that needs to be answered. They do serve a purpose, I know, in more rural areas where resources and equipment and those types of things are more factors, especially when the population base is much thinner. So those are questions that need to be addressed. But I do think, and agree with Anthony, consolidation is something that has to be on the table. How that all shakes out needs to be well thought out. Also, special interest groups that get a lot of our tax dollars. And again, I'm not for or against, I'm just stating facts. There are special interest groups that get a lot of our tax money. And look, we're paying the bills, we're the citizens. So we have the right to look at our government and say, hey, this isn't right, and we know it's not right, but it's not being addressed. You know, one of the things that was good for the taxpayer, this is not a partisan thing, okay? But capping of salaries at the end of people's careers to get out at a higher level that they could pension out at a higher level, the taxpayer's on the hook for that for many years after the person retires. There was a step, I believe, in the right direction to cap salaries, I believe, at 3%, increases at 3% for the final 4 years or so of the salary. That was taken off and changed, and the 6% was put back in. Now, that didn't help the taxpayer at all. I'm concerned about the taxpayer. Now, why was that? We were taking a step in the right direction there, and then we stepped backwards, and that has to stop. We can't have that, and we certainly can't have that. That's just not right for the taxpayers. Another thing that I think has to be addressed is unfunded mandates from Springfield. Look, it's real easy to tell us as taxpayers, well, guess what? You guys have to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, and by the way, you have to pay for it too. Now, you come to a more rural county like we are, with a population base of 50-something thousand, we don't have the population base that a Cook County has. And so when a mandate is given by Springfield, no matter how good it sounds in theory, like we're going to pay this group X amount minimum salary, that sounds great. That sounds really good. Now all of a sudden you have a small population base, and where's that money going to come from? A lot of times it comes from our property taxes, and it's not the fault of our local units of government because they have to come up with the money. And so you're putting our local units of government in a box, and you're putting the taxpayer in a very tough position, and you're putting our local units of government in a tough position. Unfunded mandates, and Kirk, maybe you can help me out on this, are they even legal under the Illinois Constitution? Are we supposed to have unfunded mandates? I don't know. Maybe someone can address that. I'm not an expert on that. Another thing that I think should be addressed, and again, I'm trying to throw ideas out there, these things have to be massaged and thought of, is the cost of living, the COLA, the 3% compounding increase in cost of living for pensioners in Illinois. That's costing us an exuberant amount of money. We have people, here, I'll give you an example. I know somebody, good person, one of my former instructors at the college, spent their career there, did an excellent job, was a great educator, got out, pensioned out, left the state, is making 6 figures. Good for him. But now they're getting cost of living increases every year, and they're not paying any state income taxes on that as part of their pension benefits. And I think that's not fair. As an independent business owner, I have to pay taxes on the money I make. No one's going to exempt me. And I think that that's something that needs to be looked at. It's costing billions and billions. What's the figure, Anthony, on that?
I don't even want to give you the number. You might get mad.
Well, try me. What is it? Do you know offhand?
It's in the billions.
It's in the billions. It's costing the state billions of dollars. And again, it's not the fault of the pensioner. These are just agreements that were made that are costing us money. And so
that happened in 1984.
1984. So it's been around a long time. And another thing, I want to be real careful about this, but you know, The solution to all of our problems in Illinois is not just to increase other taxes. There's a reason why we have an exodus out of the state. It costs a lot of money to live here. And I said this at the meeting in Springfield. Don't steal $2,000 out of my garage and come to my front door and give me $200 and act like you're doing me a favor. So these increases that we got in the last legislative session, again, a nonpartisan, they've hurt us. They hurt the people in Coles County. I have some statistics for you here that I got from our local economic development people recently. And these are 2017 numbers. Coles County median household income in 2017 was $41,907. The per capita income in our county, according to these figures, in 2017 was $26,060. 19.5%, almost 20% of the persons in Coles County are living in poverty. That's 1 in 5. That is a tough pill to swallow when you tell somebody who's barely making it, can barely put food on the table, can barely pay for their grandparents' or parents' elderly care, that now they're going to have to pay more in gasoline tax. Now they're going to pay $60 more to get a vehicle sticker, $100 more. That hurts, and it's hurting the people down here. And I'm not going to speak for my entire county, but I'll just say I don't think it's right. My introduction to taxes, short story. When I first bought my first piece of property, my first house, I was a young man, I was in my 20s. I found a house fairly cheap. It was a fixer-upper. I was just starting out. I remember I paid my first tax bill, and I went into the assessor's office to pay my bill. There was an older gentleman. I was in my mid-20s at this time. There was an elderly gentleman in front of me, and he was crying at the counter. And he was explaining to the woman how he was on a fixed income. He could not afford to pay his property taxes, and he didn't know what he was going to do. And the only thing the woman behind the counter could say was, "Sir, I'm sorry, you've qualified for all the discounts and we can give you and whatnot. This is what you owe." And he said, "I don't know how I'm going to pay for my wife's medicine." And I'm sitting there listening to this while a grown man is crying, and I thought, you know what? We have a problem in a state where someone has to decide whether or not he's going to buy his wife medicine that she needs to stay healthy in her elderly age or pay his taxes. And that's wrong. And that irked me. And that image has never left my mind. And so I just want to throw something else in addition to what Mr. Carlich just said, is it's not all about getting revenue too. How about cutting the cost of living in this state? We need some of that too. We need some balance here. Thank you.
Thank you, James. For those that aren't aware, the meeting is being live streamed, and I just got a text from an individual out of Shelby County. He had 3 suggestions for the task force. Number 1, pensions. Protect what employees and retirees have earned, and a gradual phase out existing employees into a 401k. All new employees go into a 401k. Number 2, local units of government. Vote on collective bargaining. Get the issue on the ballot either by board resolution or referenda. And number 3, here we go. Reduce individual school district administrators to a county-wide administration. Create a 5-year plan to change consolidated school district operations to reduce administrative costs. The consolidation, I think, is going to be a key word. I'm in Kansas, Illinois. We have 1,003 people. I have 11 separate tax levies just in my little town, my township of Kansas. So consolidation, I think, is a big one. Rob?
James raised the issue of the amount of money. From 1984 to 2014, we lost $1 billion a year in lost revenue when we stopped taxing retirees. Judy Topeka said in 2014. Now, here it is, 2019. This is an article that just came out, and it states, it's a big ticket item. An analysis by the state controller office said the retirement income exclusion costs Illinois $2.3 billion in fiscal 2015. So when you add that $2.3 billion up until 2019, and then you go back to 1984 when they instituted the protection clause, folks, we lost $40 billion in lost revenue. Did you hear what I said? We lost $40 billion in lost revenue. So if you couple that $40 billion that we're losing in lost revenue, then you take the $1 billion a year that we're losing with too many administrators, that's a lot of billions of dollars. And we pay for that. We pay for that.
I want to go back and talk a little bit about Mr. Claridge, the CAIO is up here. I think that a couple of things need to be talked. This is another personal experience I want to share with you all. Back in I guess it would have been 2017 in January, our group forged towards the Department of Revenue in Springfield. And we went because we wanted to know more. And we went under something out of the classified ad that I'd found in the paper, and it really wasn't anything that they could do. What it was a meeting, a public meeting, to where you could go in and talk about the multiplier, to making sure that everybody's on board with the multiplier. So we all show up kind of unannounced, and they've never had anybody come in and actually challenge, and never had nobody been in there ever. And it was kind of interesting. But I want to kind of touch the thing about the Department of Revenue. And we were up there asking questions. And the questions were valid questions because things were going on in our county, and I won't go into what they were, but there were things going on in our county that we were questioning. And they politely told us that the Department of Revenue really didn't have any oversight of what's going on in the county. I want to stop that because here's the other part of this equation. This Department of Revenue in our county pays half of that salary. We're on for paying for it, okay? There's no meat in the legislation, as Kirk was telling you, for any of that to come forward to help the people in the trenches like me and James and the people here asking questions. Not that they didn't want to, but they just kind of shirked it off and let it go. So we pressed on. We've been to the Property Tax Appeal Board as well. We actually went 2-3 months later to the Property Tax Appeal Board asking the same questions. And this is another thing you need to understand. The Property Tax Appeal Board 2 years ago were 60,000 complaints behind. Behind. That means your money that you have to pay the regular property tax bill, and you pay what they say it's going to be, could be held out for 2 to 3 years. You're not going to see anything, and possibly not either. Somebody needs to look into why we can't streamline this and fix it to where if people come with an appraisal, and that appraisal is from a bona fide appraiser, and the county wants to, and the Property Tax Appeal Board wants to deal with it, and the county doesn't have the information to keep the thing going, it ought to be in the taxpayer's favor, and you need to refund their money. And again, I asked in a meeting with the Property Tax Appeal Board for wrongdoing. And again, I was told that there was no oversight for us. None. So we got 2 people that are taking an omnibudsman course towards citizens' problems that don't want to do anything for the citizen. And the other thing, I'll just kind of leave this thought with you. I've never seen a reduction in my property taxes. I've never seen one. But I know that the market has fallen. If we go back into 2006 and 2007, we know things were wrong. There wasn't any reduction in my property tax. I want to know why. Because if we're going to drive this thing and we're going to do it with market-based values, we need something more fairer than just saying that's the way it's going to be. So we need some legislation done to where the Department of Revenue finally has some teeth. And when things are not right, they got to step forward and help the taxpayer. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Yes, sir. If you would, just introduce yourself for the record.
My name's Jonathan Kaye. Pro tip, every farm building in the state is overtaxed. I'm 3 years into appeal on that, and this is how they do it. The assessors don't go by statute. They go by custom. Custom means, well, that's how they do it in that county, so we're going to do it in our county. And every single one of them do it. So that's point number one. Point number two, very obvious, our biggest problem is public sector unions. If we weren't fighting with ourselves, if our neighbors weren't in those unions, we wouldn't be having half the problems that we're having right now. I'm an old union man, so it's very difficult for me to say this thing, but that's a fact. A couple factoids. I saw a statistic in 2018 that said 10,000 jobs were created in Illinois, 14,000 of which were government jobs. Think about that. That's crazy. 10,000 jobs were created in Illinois, 14,000 of which were government jobs. That makes no sense. Okay. But we've got a lot of other problems. Our retired teachers, we can't throw them under the bus. They've got pensions that they need to get paid. They're getting $30,000, $40,000 a year in their pensions, which is just about as much as you need, probably a little bit below what you need to survive in the state. That's a huge problem. But the administrators, they're making bank. I was in a small organization that this town put together, and they had a little board of directors. And they were all made up of school administrators. And I was the only private sector representative on this committee. And I pointed out that the emperor had no clothes, so they kicked me out of the committee. The beauty of it is that I got to experience their perspective. And their perspective is this. They are very big, they're very large, usually very fat. They're very high paid, all of them 6 figures plus. And they gathered up in a group and told me what I was doing wrong. None of them accepted the emperor has no clothes premise, which was, you guys are doing nothing, you are obstructionist. If you get out of my way, I can solve these problems. Because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver. My wife is an engineer. We are problem solvers. We know that the buildings are being overtaxed. We know that the administrators are being overpaid. We know how to solve these problems. And it's a math problem. It's really just a math problem. I have an old saying, problems are easy to solve until people get involved. Problems are easy to solve. It's a math problem. If you just break it down to the numbers, reduce it to the ridiculous, it's a math problem. I want to speak to consolidation. I talk to a lot of these township folks, and from a rural point of view, townships make sense, believe it or not. I am all for less government. But the reason that they make sense is because all politics is bottom up. So if we're going to cut, we cut from the top down. We cut the state. That's where it is. If we are not functioning in a cohesive unit, which I am not with these watchdogs, so we are divided just within ourselves, it's going to be very difficult to be one crossing parties. So anyway, the Coles County guys are doing a great job. really think the world of Rob Perry. We should tie the administrators' wages, and really all government workers' wages, to the median wages of the county that are paying them. So write that down. We must make the government workers' wages have some kind of anchor to what the taxpayers who are paying those taxes are providing, because we cannot pay that, and it actually divides us more. It makes us a little bit frustrated with our neighbors. We can't be having that. I suppose there are a few other things, but again, we are problem solvers. These problems are not hard to solve. They're all mathematical equations. That committee that I was talking about that I got kicked out of, we're in the housing committee, and we have evaluated what to do about the infill problem. You know, we have a lot of towns that have empty houses all through there. We have solved that problem. The city leaders didn't want to hear anything about it, so they just got in the way, and inertia is their practice. Another thing, all our government bodies need to have private sector representation. We're getting too many retired government workers on there. They have pensions, so they can afford to be there. Private sector people have families, jobs, businesses, and we don't have pensions. So it's way more difficult for us to be on there. We should limit the number of government employees on these committees and on these boards relative to the ratio of government employees in our counties. Write that down. Factoid. The average government, the number of government employees of the county is 8.5% of government workers in each county statewide on average. Coles County has 12.5% of their workers as government workers. So it's a 50% increase in this county. So that is going to make more of us have to pay more taxes to cover their wages, their pensions, and their benefits. There's a few more things, but I think that's all you could probably take from me for now. I'd be glad to help. Let me know when you want to make it right with my wife, and we can talk a little more.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hey, last night, one of the things that we did looking up on the Illinois Comptroller website, for those that aren't familiar with it, you can go and look at local government and pull up their annual financial report. I'm going to speak to Coles County. On their annual financial report, it showed an indebtedness of $12 million. In the grand scheme of things, that's not near as bad as some other places. How many live in Mattoon? Any idea what your debt is reported to the Illinois Comptroller for the city? How many live in Mattoon? What's the population? Anybody know?
About 20 to 25,000.
$101 million. Let me say that again. $101 million on the Illinois Comptroller's reporting for Mattoon's indebtedness. That's one city.
That's the reportable.
That's the reportable, right, the reported indebtedness. Now, we did a project 2 years ago looking at school districts, and we requested records of indebted obligations, long-term debt, for school districts, all 800, and I think it was 56 or 60?
856.
856. It was over $37 billion. And that's bonds, credit cards, loans, leases. So $37 billion. One little community of 20,000 is $100 million in debt. We've got a real problem, and you can't tax your way out of it. It takes a whole lot of other solutions. With that, as members of the committee, members of the state representative, I'd like to pass the mic to you folks. One of the questions that was texted to me is, what suggestions have you guys put on the table as trying to move this forward, if any?
Well, I must say this has been very educational, and thank you all of you for your comments. I really haven't come to any conclusions tonight because some of the things I would like to debate. For instance, you said your wife is an engineer. And you had mentioned about you would like for everyone's salary to be similar in the...
To be tied to the median wage of the county.
And so I'm just going to assume that being an engineer, what would that median wage be?
Well, the median wages are already figured. You can look at it many different ways. We're talking about school administrators' median wage should be, or average wage should be tied to the median wage of the county. So you can do it 1.5 times, you can do it a number of different ways, but you shouldn't just do it arbitrarily, and it shouldn't be top down. One other point to Kirk before we lose this moment. 80% of the revenue that Mattoon receives goes towards police and fire salaries, pensions, and benefits. 80%, right? That's not a city. Right. That is a militarized organization. So 20% is left to run the city. That's not including the municipal workers' wages, pensions, and salaries. Take that out of the mix, and now we're down to what, 5%, 10% to run the city? It's out of control, folks.
So I agree, and that's the purpose of us being here tonight. I wish I could come up with an answer, but it would be unfair. But there's multitudes of problems. We have the same problems. How do we get here? We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. Right. But at least we are talking about it. And so when you talk about the police, we know how we got here. And we know what we wanted. We all wanted to be safe. So when we saw all of this cavalry coming in, no one complained. But now it's here, and it's staying. And now we're talking about it. And when we were building our schools, and the school administrators was, are being paid high, and our kids was coming home, and, we didn't think about it then. But now, as we're getting older, the bills are going up, our income's going down. We said, whoa, wait a minute. But the most important thing is there's other problems that we have to solve before we start reducing people's salary. Now, I agree with you in regards to the administrators, but we have to make sure everybody's paying their fair share of taxes. We have to make sure all the taxes are being collected fairly. So there's certain things that we have to put in place before we start talking about the unfunded mandates. I know we did unfunded mandates in regards to recess in schools, but then, and we took away gym, and we took away some other things as band and practice like that. Well, that was for the children, and we know music and recess, the more recess you have, the grades go up and the problems go down. So to have gym or to have recess is an unfunded mandate. In the long run, you will have sicker children because of diabetes, high blood pressure, and other problems that comes along with living a sedentary life. So these things are debatable. We should be able to talk about them, and I will not try to answer all of them tonight, but I did hear you, I agree with you, and I guarantee you, when we get back to Springfield, we're going to have lots to talk about.
Mrs. Chairwoman?
Yes.
On something that Jonathan said, if I may, Jonathan, just to reiterate real quick, just so everybody knows the facts for our county, the median household income in 2017 was $41,907 here. The per capita income was $26,060. And also, along with that, in all fairness to the police and fire, we've got arbitration laws when they disagree on contracts and whatnot. I think if you don't look at the arbitration laws, then it's a big mistake. Because when you've got two parties trying to work out a deal, and you've got laws that say, well, if you can't work something out in X amount of time, an arbitrator's going to come in, and whatever the arbitrator decides, that's what you have to pay. I mean, let's be honest, it's not just greedy cops and firefighters. I want to be careful. We need to have the respect to our first responders because, you know, they deserve that. You know, they save people's lives. So I want to be fair to them too. But I do agree, it's a problem. The pensions are a problem.
Nobody's disrespecting the first responders. I'm just taking a mathematical fact, and I'm laying it before your eyes.
I'm just letting you know about the arbitration part.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about the arbitration part, because I've been to these meetings. I go to the police pension board meetings and the fire pension board meetings, and there's nobody representing the taxpayer. They hire a lawyer, often from out of state, to negotiate on behalf of the taxpayer. They get $400 an hour. They're in no hurry to settle, and they've got no skin in the game. That's right. Furthermore, who else is protecting us? Our politicians? Dale Ryder, out the door with the pension. All right. Our state representative for the 110th is not here today. Who's represented us? So yeah, we've got a lot of problems. We are underrepresented, and we do need to work together. We need to tighten up our ship. We've got to look at it from a mathematical standpoint. But we need political will, too. And the baby boomers are in control. The baby boomers are in control. And until we get the millennials rocking the house, until they are aware that they are on the hook to pay, nothing's going to happen.
We can't get them to vote.
Why would they? They're going to Colorado. They're leaving the state.
Jonathan, if you could, in the numbers when you talk about the police and the fire, was that 80%, did that also include school districts? Because I think it does. I didn't hear that you said school districts.
No, it does not. It's only police and fire.
Okay. That's a wake-up call, along with $100 million in debt. One of the other messages I got in was TIF districts. So if anybody would like to address the TIF district issue, is there anybody else in the crowd that has a question, a comment, a concern that they'd like to come up and share or fill out a cue card? Raise your hand, we'll get you a card and a pen. Charlie, did you have something?
Well, I'll say a few words. I won't take long.
Okay.
Will I come up there? Is that a deal?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Well, I know it's getting late, and do appreciate the words and all the folks that came down, the folks from Chicago and our representatives. I'd just like to say I grew up, I guess you consider us poor, but even though it was a little unhandy, it wasn't that bad. We all had plenty to eat. I grew up with the idea that we ought to take care of ourselves. I think we ought to realize that all of us, I've tried not to, I've lived by it, but it encroaches on our lives where you ain't got a choice a lot of times, but we're expecting too much from government. And until that stops, I don't think these problems can be solved. You really can't solve these problems. There's too many false ideas that government is supposed to provide for us. We've lost what our forefathers have given us. I would advise you to buy this book, No Time for Slaves. It talks about taxation, it talks about liberty and freedom. It just ain't going to work. It just is not going to work. And until we get back to the old paths and grow up and quit being beggars, we don't have to beg for government to take care of our lives. And that's what I've lived by. It's still truth that we ought to go back and look into, and we'll get things changed. Until that happens, I'm going to keep plugging along, hoping that it can happen. But having said that, it's not necessarily too hopeful when you look around us at times. Thank you.
Charlie.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
Charlie, with all due respect, I think, let me just speak for me. I grew up poor as well. But I always knew that if I continue to work, and my mother, she always worked, tried to do the best she can. My grandparents, they was cheated out of their income, their wages. And so as a result, they didn't really have the opportunity. They didn't have the opportunity to pull themselves up by their bootstraps because of all these interventions that they had to come in contact with. They were not responsible for the property taxes. They were not responsible for the redlining. They were not responsible for the discrimination that they had to endure. So all these things happened. Their wages was held back. They were not responsible. And as taxpayers, to say that we beg, I beg the difference. Because no one has bailed us out. But we bailed out the banks with our money, and they didn't ask us. We bailed out the insurance companies with our money. They are the ones that failed. The banks failed. The insurance companies failed. The businesses failed. But the automobiles company failed. And where did they get their bailout from? Me and you. But now let us fail in meeting a mortgage payment. Let us fail in being able to afford our prescription drugs. Let us fail to be able to send our children to college. Who are we going to blame? Now, when you say government is not involved, well, it's a funny thing about government that's not involved. They should be involved. Because over in Canada, they're selling the same prescription drugs as we are buying here in the United States. The difference is Canada is paying for it cheaper. In other countries, there's access to health care not based on if you are paying the middleman, the insurance company. The insurance company is causing you to go without health care. The insurance company will be the one to say whether or not your doctor could provide the services or not. So we do need government. We do need government to tell the insurance companies to stay out of our business. That's what the federal law did in regards to supposedly privacy. But the fact of the matter is, I don't want to get off into that conversation, but I don't want people to ever leave here thinking that we should apologize because we're paying, some of us are paying Social Security because we are entitled to it, because we are fortunate enough to live to be 65, and that's Medicare. And thank God for Medicare, because if we didn't have that, a lot of people would be just falling dead in the streets. They wouldn't be able to have access to hospital, access to their prescription drugs. So government has a place, but everything could go too far. Even being without government, that's the problems that we're having with the air, the water, if we didn't have government involved. So that's just my commentary on that. So thank you very much.
Brother Travis, tax doctor, there was a question raised about tips. Can you talk about Tom's book, because you might can point to the book that gives a synopsis of Chicago, but you can also use it as a model for the state, because he was on our show last week. What's the book? And you can kind of Google it and look at the numbers.
While you're getting ready for that, I want to address some of those comments that you made. A lot of those issues, like bailing out the banks, insurance companies, and all that, those are federal issues. The federal government can print money, and while it does cause inflation, the state cannot. We can only create debt, and so debt is really our primary problem. But you do make valid points about these bailouts. They were erroneous, they were insiders, they were corrupt, and we shouldn't be doing them. But from a state point of view, that's something else. Our problem and our focus here should be the state, and it should be our debt, and why we have this debt.
We're just talking about government, just to be clear. Thank you.
Well, let me say this. I remember being a student, there was a guy by the name of John Kenneth Galbraith, who was the economist for President Kennedy. In reading his book, he stated, the country can't afford to let one segment of our population go unemployed if a major business have issues. Is it right that the government steps in and bail that industry out? We can say yes, we can say no. But if we got about 5,000 to 10,000 to 30,000 of our fellow citizens out of work because the government didn't step in and help that industry, shame on us. We are our brother's keeper. We may not, something about economics and capitalism. We may not always like that helping hand. But on the flip side of that, when it comes to Wall Street, Main Street bailed out Wall Street. It's time for Wall Street to help Main Street. And folks, we didn't ask for the 2008 market crash. Them folks on Wall Street did that. The Glass-Steagall Act that put an end to the Great Depression. Bill Clinton supported the move to kill Glass-Steagall. And once that happened, we began to see the erosion of our economy. Some of these laws that they come up with may seem like it's intrusion, but folks, capitalism by far is the best economic system to have. But if you let capitalism go amok, it is dangerous. And my good buddy, Adam Smith, who I read all the time, he pointed out in 1776 that if you let capitalism run amok, you let big business take over your government, and that's what we got today. What we're experiencing in the United States of America right now, Adam Smith talked about that. Folks, sometimes we may not like some of the solutions that come our way. But if we don't take government and make government work for the people, then we got issues. And Lord knows, before President Obama got elected, this country was headed for another depression. And some folks was already in a depression. And the decision that he had to make in helping to build out big business in Wall Street should have been made, but there should have been some caveat to it. When the mortgage industry went south and we bailed out those folks should have turned around and helped all of us out. And I use myself as an example. My property went into foreclosure for 3 years. I even went down on Wacker Drive and watched the mortgage company sell my property. And they sold it back to themselves. They wouldn't give me a helping hand at that time. But I had to wrestle with that mortgage company. And I take my hand off to this woman down in Florida. I'm a veteran. And our motto, we don't leave no veterans behind. And when it comes to our mortgages, the big mortgage companies have left the American people behind, and that ain't right. But I think that lady down in Florida who works for the mortgage company, because she said, Mr. Travis, what do you want to do? I said, I want to keep my house. And that woman worked with me till I finally got the modification. But the problem is, because what happened in 2008, I owe $120,000 on my property, but my property was worth $24,000. So I'm still up underwater, but I still got my property. So as a vet, I'm elated at the fact that I got my property. But folks, we got so many homeless veterans in Illinois, it ain't funny. Getting back to TIF. Folks, if you can,
Tell everybody what TIF is.
TIF is tax increment financing. Matter of fact, this whole section could be in the TIF district. Okay? Now, understand one thing. In 1979, when I first got elected, I was 23 years old. When they started talking about TIF districts and TIF, folks down in Springfield was beginning to get the word that we got serious problems with these TIF districts. And to my dismay, really nothing was really done about it. And when we look at the TIF up in Chicago, I was at a meeting dealing with the TIF. If you lived on the north side, somehow in the city of Chicago, they voted to come up with this contiguous. How in the hell can the east side of Chicago be contiguous with the north side? Well, folks, they found a way to do it. And when you read this book, Chicago is Not Broke by Tom Tesler, only costs $15, folks. Go buy one and read it. He points out that all of them billions of dollars is sitting there. And folks, this money was allocated for the blighted areas of the west and south side of Chicago. Them folks didn't see none of that money. And to our legislators, when you go back to Springfield, you may want to fix that. Put an end to them folks being able to take TIF, no matter what part of Illinois you live in. You should not go to the east side and take the money that was set aside for that area and bring it over to another side. That's wrong. But let me say this. And I want you to understand about these 856 school districts. We have 2,075,000 students in Illinois. 856 school districts. When it comes to the state of Florida, they have 2,700,000 students. Folks, they got 74 school districts. 74. So, somewhere along the line, the General Assembly saw fit from 1940 to bring that 12,000 down to 856. Folks, consolidation got to be on the table. Thank you.
On the topic of TIF, come on up, Rex, we'll get to you. On the topics of TIF, from a representative standpoint, one thing I want to share. In Coles County, as an example, and James, you can support me on this with some details, or John, you can, but when you have a TIF district, there are certain requirements that the county clerk has to sign off that the assessments are true and accurate. Well, Coles County claimed that we didn't have any assessments for 16 years. Yet we have TIF districts and documents going to the state for TIFs that says it's true and accurate. Well, how could it be true and accurate if it wasn't done for 16 years? Wow. And that's back to why we need the forensic, detailed audits to identify every one of those wrongdoings and hold people accountable for not doing their job. That's my 2 cents. Rex?
Rex Dukeman, live here in Coles County all my life, and tonight we came here for a tax meeting. And I just wanted to say that all right. One thing that I thought of that should be addressed was our property taxes tonight. Okay, so I just actually took down my property tax bill and broke it down. Like Jonathan said, this is math, okay? We have 43% going to education here in Coles County. 21.25% to TIF. Almost 21% to pensions. That is 84% of our tax bill going to these items only. That leaves 16% for Coles County, Mattoon Township, you'd have Charleston, City of Mattoon, the Library, Park District, Drainage, and the Airport Authority. So they get 16% of our money. So it's not hard to understand why they have no money to do things in our community, okay? We have to figure out a way to stop the bleeding. Schools, pensions, those two things have to be addressed and fixed. There's plenty of people that will finish a career, retire at 55, get another job with another state agency, and then draw another pension. Double dipping, triple dipping, those things have to stop. We cannot afford that.
Then they'll retire out of state.
And most of them, yes, exactly.
Then they run.
We're going to have school consolidation sooner or later, okay? We had administrators that had been teachers, okay? Well, once those jobs are eliminated, they're either going to go back to teaching, or like you said, they're going to move to another climate that's in their favor. Well, you're exactly right. But we have to fix those things. And until those hard decisions are made here in our state, nothing can get better. We also have a U-Haul business here locally that I run. And people of all ages are leaving our state. I had one gentleman this summer. He was a teacher in his 20s. And he came to pick up equipment, and the reason he was leaving was because he wasn't sure as a teacher if the money was going to be there for him to retire at a later date. So he chose to go to Colorado instead. Now that's somebody in their 20s. We always have seniors leaving because they're on fixed incomes. Well, it only makes sense to pick up and leave if you have to. So we have to start addressing the pensions and the schools. That's where the majority of our money is going. Until we actually face the facts, nothing will get better.
But let me ask you this question. What would you say to that young teacher that left? What would you say to that young teacher that packed up and left to go to Colorado because he was afraid that there will not be a pension for him when he get older?
What would I say?
What would you say to him?
I would say, as an educator, you should stay and fight, because we have intelligent people in our communities.
Fight for more money to get a fair pension so when he gets older, he can live happily ever after with his family?
Let's secure the money. Let's secure it. Make sure it's going to be there.
Right.
But we have to figure out how we're going to do that.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, I agree. Because how would you expect a young person to want to stay in an environment where their pay is capped at 20,000.
Why is it capped? I'm not saying.
No, 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 we're not saying that it's capped, but the average, the income for poor people in this town is 20,000?
19,500. That's the per capita.
19,500.
Per capita.
And so my point is, people would like to know, when we were coming up, when we were younger, I'm 60-something, so, and I remember working for $1 an hour. And so, right. And so with that being said, I know that I wouldn't want to do that now. I know that I would not be able to take care of my family, even on $10 an hour, because of the gas. You know, years ago, and a lot of young people don't know this, but TV used to be free. But now you can't have TV without having cable, and cable comes with a bill. So the gas, all the utilities have gone up. So even if we wanted to cap people's pensions, and I agree with you, some of the pensions are out of control. But we have to find a medium someplace where is it that that young man and his family would feel comfortable staying here and retiring one day and not moving to Colorado. Thank you.
Let me address one point that you made, Rex. That the property taxes and the statistics that you brought up is a huge point. In the case of property managers, when you look at those tax rates that are being paid, often the schools and other entities make more money on a rental property than the actual owner or property manager of that property. What that causes is that there isn't money to put back into that property, and then that's how poor properties develop. So that runs down the property values, that runs down the quality of life, and so those taxes have a detrimental downward effect.
I just want to say, there's another young lady that would have been here with us tonight, and she is called the apartment lady. Mm-hmm. And so if she was here, she would say you're absolutely right, that rental apartment is very expensive because that owner of that rental property, his taxes have gone up, and he's not going to forego his family for those families in that building, so he's going to go up on them in order to pay his bills, and guess what? He's not going to be able to put the money back into the upkeep of the property because it's so doggone high. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question back here.
Hello, my name is Mike Behringer. I just want to address TV is free down here.
Oh, is it?
We have antennas. I would say that there's several that watch antenna television. So you don't have to pay. That's part of the issue, I feel like. What people think they need to have. There's a lot of people that have $1,000 cell phones that can't pay the bill for their car or anything else. They make cell phones that are cheaper than $1,000. They have Netflix and Amazon and all of these things. There's some personal responsibility on the person to not step out beyond what necessities are, what they need, and those kind of things. I don't know how you regulate that or how you fix that, because that's people. But it's not, we can't just blanket try to meet everyone's needs, because sometimes people want more than what they really need. So that's tough. But I would say like a detailed budget audit is what we need. I would love to have a balanced budget in the state of Illinois. That'd be amazing. Mandate it.
It is mandated.
It is. Right.
It's the Constitution.
I meant actually follow it.
Thank you.
There you go. And actually have a balanced budget. I'll bet everybody out here has a checkbook that they balance, and if they spend 3 times more than what's in that checking account, somebody's going to be asking them how they're going to pay those bills. The state has spent more than's in the checkbook since well before I was born. That's a huge thing that needs to be addressed, I feel like. it's a spending problem as well as a tax problem. There has to be something addressed with the amount of money that's spent and taken in. I mean, that has to be a huge part of the discussion.
Thank you. We're winding down. We got about 10 minutes left. Rob, as soon as you're done, we've got 2 more questions back here.
Representative Flowers.
Yes, sir.
Would you please explain to me why there's a different set of tax situations in Chicago? They have different rules than what we do here in the rest of the state. Why is there a separate game? Why is it different in Chicago? Why can't it all be one?
Cook County.
Home rule.
Simple. It's home rule.
We got home rule down here.
The population is different. We're more populated. As far as the jobs, the opportunities, and different things like that, it's greater.
But how many other states have 2 different sets of rules for 2 different parts of the state?
I really can't answer that question because I'm sure that the urban areas are different than the rural as well as the suburban areas. If you go to the suburban areas, there's different sets of rules that's there. The urban areas.
Well, we got that though in here. What we live with is the same way. The Department of Revenue, all I'm asking is if the Department of Revenue takes that all into consideration, why is Cook County separate from the whole? I don't understand why.
I don't understand as far as your county. That is you have a different, this is Coles County. I'm from Cook County. There's 102 counties. And I guarantee you, if you go to all 102, you will come up with 102 different sets of policies and rules.
Why is it set aside?
30%, yeah.
10%.
Half of that.
That's right.
But why?
The state law itself is different.
Why does it have
That
a
was what his question was.
He was asking about the counties. Why is it that there's different sets of rules? And we have our own Cook County board, our Cook County president.
What's the question?
And what's the question again?
It's
Well, I'm
about
just
assessment.
asking.
Oh, as far as the assessments are
Yeah,
concerned?
why is it all different?
The Constitution separate Cook
But
County.
hold it. We're all from Illinois.
No, but you got to understand the Constitution. It's 102 counties. Cook County, because of 3 million population, gives it home rule where the assessor is separate from the other 101 counties.
Yeah.
I think what he's, if I could
But
real quick.
I just want to say this one thing. The 35 years that I've been in office, believe me, I have seen and asked the same questions in regards to there are certain privileges that your state's attorneys have down here that I never even heard of in the county of Cook. So there's different, this is the state of Illinois, but there's not one set of rules. Even though there's state laws, it is the implementation of the rulemaking for certain areas where it can be different. So I will never be naive and tell anyone that we live in one state of Illinois and everything is equal. That's certainly not true.
We have 2 Chicago.
I think one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, I think what he was looking at was Illinois has the Illinois state statutes for property tax. And that Illinois state statute, property tax assessment, there's one rule for everybody except Cook County.
Takes you back to the
And
Constitution.
that's correct. They have home rule units downstate as well, but we do have one set of rules for everybody in the state, but a separate rules for Cook County for assessments. And that, I think that was the question, is why do we have a distinct separation of that issue?
If I can make a statement.
Yes, sir.
In Chicago, those rules are separate in all black communities where we're being rate of all our taxes, 150 schools closed, and TIF dollars are designated for Chicago public schools in the low-income areas are going up north to build Lincoln Park, 78, a whole brand-new zip code, and our zip codes are going down, and Soldier Field is getting a new hub transportation, and the mayor and them are now saying $95 million for a police station, say we need some more to lock us up with a police station that's dysfunctional and shooting black people. So the rules is just like they are. It's rules for some people, they don't have for other people. That is Chicago and Illinois being the most corrupt in the country.
And along those lines with what you said in schools, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in Chicago, the city runs the school. They are not a school district. And the city mayor appoints the board members, they're not elected. And that's back to our whole system of government. We're either constitutional republic or we're not. We could go on all night, brother, trust me. I had two questions back here we want to get to. Clear in the back. Lincoln, come on up.
No, you're on TV.
Nah, I don't want to be on TV.
You're on there anyway.
Go ahead, project your voice.
I don't see this problem ever getting fixed for a couple reasons. With the amount of people here. At the highest count, I had 48 people. There's 43 here now, including everybody up there, and all the planners, the press, and us few people here in the cheap seats. Why aren't people concerned? You guys should be sitting way back there, and this should be full, clear to the hall. But it's not. I don't know the answer to that. And secondly, I just think it's kind of ironic that we're doing this in a business that's no longer here.
That was kind of the point.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
In a TIF district.
Sir, may I say this, please? I'm not worried about the number of people that's here, because the people that's here and the information and the conversation that we are able to have and the exchange is to me, it's priceless. If this room was packed, we would not be able to have this exchange. So if there was only two of us, and quite frankly, I'm glad there's more than two because I don't have to talk to myself. You know, but I thank you for being here, and I thank everyone else, and I'm sure that everyone is going to go out and tell someone else about what all they missed and they should have been here.
Well, you're right. You can have a better dialogue with smaller groups, but it's also less impactful for you to take.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, because when I have three of my colleagues here,
Two on the phone, right?
and two on the phone. But who's the other? Because I didn't call the name.
Rashad Senator.
Oh, is there a senator? Okay.
Well, there are two
But
others.
anyway, I think there's two other members on the phone. But the fact of the matter is, sir, we are here to listen to you. And if it was just one or two, we're glad it's not. But for the people that's here, as far as I'm concerned, this room is packed to the rafters. And thank you very much.
We have one more question out here in the yellow. Did you still have a question?
Well, I just had a question. There's been a lot of comments made this evening and about all over state government and everything. But in our county, our property taxes, if I'm not mistaken, don't pay for any state government. Is that right? It is only for local and county governments?
Anybody want to address that?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I thought maybe it might help us get back on track to discussing the property taxes if we kind of got off the state government, focused on the county government.
If you want to save between 60 and 70% of your property taxes, number one, get the schools off the property tax system. Number two, go to a statewide budget for education. Three, consolidate these school districts. Their colleagues out of New Jersey made the point, because see, New Jersey is number one in property taxes. We're number two. Their colleagues in New Jersey made the comment, if you want to make New Jersey affordable, consolidate those school districts. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Anybody else? Representatives?
Let's start with Darren.
I want to thank you guys for coming here tonight. I do want to speak on behalf of Representative Miller. Texted me. He is listening. He and his wife are coming in from somewhere, so he apologizes that he couldn't be here. I want to let you know that I don't take a pension for the representative for this position. I have term limited myself. I encourage you to go to illinoissunshine.org and look up where a lot of contributions come in to politicians. Maybe that'll answer some questions why things don't get done as much. But, I do appreciate everyone coming here and being a part of this. And it is a shame that this isn't full because guess what? Ultimately, the way this republic is set up with townships and school boards, it is up to the local population to figure this stuff out. And we're closing our eyes up because, of ball teams and stuff like that. So we're going to have to figure out we've got some tough decisions to make, and I really wish the local populace would make that instead of the state, because I'm not one of these people that likes to, mandate everything from the state. But if we don't, state funds or taxes going up, I got elected to this position because of my frustration with high taxes. I feel your pain. I've got 8 grandkids, 1 on the way. My sole purpose is to make sure they have a future right here in Southeast Illinois, and everything else kind of falls in between. So you guys showing up, sharing your concern, we carry that to Springfield, and hopefully we can work together better in the days to come to restore this state.
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you for coming here as well. And for the record, I'm a millennial rocking the house here. But, these things on the property taxes, it's not rocket science, really, when it comes right down to it. You don't move the needle on property taxes until you deal with the biggest cost drivers in the state. That's the public sector pensions and the sheer volume of government. But, you talked about we want to hear solutions. I've been in Springfield for a year and nobody talks about solutions. It's not talked about on these issues specifically, and I think the reason that it's not talked about is if you go start messing with this stuff, you're going to mess with some very, very powerful, very well-funded special interests. And that gets back to the corruption problem in Illinois. The money just keeps going round and round and round. We've got senators and representatives and aldermen, getting indicted for these pay-to-play scandals, and if you look at the people that are paying most of these people, it's the special interests that have a vested interest in nothing being reformed on the public sector pensions, on the consolidation of government. We had a great bipartisan school district efficiency consolidation commission reform that I'm a co-sponsor on with Democratic Representative Rita Mayfield from the suburbs up there. This bill passed the Illinois House unanimously, not a single vote against it, and then it went to Senate committee. And it got a brick put on it. It absolutely got a brick put on it because the public sector special interests decided that they didn't like it. So it's just sitting there. But it's a great reform. It's a great start. In my opinion, it doesn't go far enough. It does a lot of the things that we talked about, consolidating district-level administrators. We're not even talking about, closing a single school or getting rid of a single teacher with these deals. So that just makes all the sense in the world, but because the special interests in Springfield don't want anything to do with it, it's not in their playbook, they put a brick on it, and that's very, very unfortunate. I'm also co-sponsoring a pension package, this pretty common sense, I think, moving forward in this next legislature. All this does is basically 3 things. Number 1, the cost of living increases, which isn't even really, it shouldn't even be called that. They should be called automatic raises because that's what they are, because there's no connection to the economy on it. All we're asking is to tie that 3% compounding, let's tie it to the consumer price index. That way everything stays even. We can't allow government to keep growing faster than our ability to pay for it. We got to look at retirement ages on some of these things. I mean, this stuff's got to be on the table. And why aren't we putting a maximum cap on these pensions? I mean, we have it for Social Security. It's somewhere around $132,000. Nobody should be making a public sector pension above that. You know, if you're making that kind of money, then you have a responsibility to be funding a major portion of your own retirement. You know, if we cap that at $132,000, that takes all the double dipping, triple dipping, quadruple dipping, that takes all of that stuff off the table. It just caps it at that. So that's some stuff that makes sense. But what I found is there's a lot of things that make sense that don't get a whole lot of traction in Springfield. So until we tackle this special interest deal in Springfield, it's going to be really, really hard to move forward with legislation. But I'm encouraged by the people here. I'm encouraged by a lot of the comments. There's a lot of smart people, a lot of good ideas. We just need to get some momentum going in Springfield.
Not much left to say.
Consolidation bill number.
HB 3053. Rita Mayfield was the...
It was a chief sponsor. One of the things that I think Anthony talked about were the taxing retirements. And there's a bigger drain. There's a bigger drain on our system than the loss of income if we were to tax retirements. And that's the income that's been lost from people that have left. The exodus of this state, the people that have left, that have taken their wealth, that have taken their pensions out of this state, and I'm not talking about public sectors. I'm talking about people that have had homes here, have had businesses here, that have worked here all their lives, and now they can't afford to stay here. That's cost us billions of dollars. Billions. We need to make this state more friendly. We need to make this state a place where people want to stay, where people want to come. And that goes to the tax problem. The biggest driver of taxes has been said here over and over and over tonight. Pensions. Every unit of government, every unit, all the way up to where we are in Springfield, the biggest driver of your taxes are pensions. And until we have the will to put a reform issue on the ballot, to open up the Constitution and address that sector, the pension clause, we're never going to solve this problem. Never going to solve it. We need a constitutional amendment for the pension clause. Because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I don't support, you got to support your people. By the way, Representative Halbrook has texted me. He's watching this from Texas. He's got a family vacation. And he said to send his regards. Thank you for this opportunity.
You bet. We have one more question for the representatives. Tony'd like to have.
Tony? Oh, I'm afraid to let him have the mic.
My question to the representative, since we know we got folks double and triple dipping, why not pass a law in Springfield that if you work for the county and then you go to work for Springfield, your pension follows you?
The question can be asked and answered, but I'm reminded of something that President Reagan did back in the 70s when he did the Social Security offset. And for the young people who started out early in life being a school teacher and was able to get a pension for being a school teacher, put in his 15, 30 years, whatever it was. And then later, he decided he wanted to be a police officer. And he put his time in to be a police officer. Now, there was a time when he could have collected both of those pensions or Social Securities without it being a problem. And by the way, he married a nurse, and she was a school teacher, and later on she became a nurse. And under Reagan, He said that those people were cheaters and they did not deserve both of those Social Securities. And so therefore, you could have the highest of one and a partial of the other. But they work for both of them.
They should have both of them.
They should have both of them, and they should have all four of them. But that cannot happen even under Social Security. Is that fair? Because every year I do the legislation I have a resolution drafted to Congress to do away with the Social Security offset. Because if it were not for the offset, maybe some seniors would be able to afford their prescription drugs, afford their deductibles, afford to move out, afford to leave some funds for their families. Maybe they would be able to afford to do so. Why are these elderly people at this time of their life, knowing that they paid their dues, have monies up there, and they're being penalized? So this conversation can go both ways. And we really need to have a conversation and do what's best. After all, we're moving into the 21st, well, we're coming out of the 21st century, but we're moving on in life. So we need to stop looking back and move forward. And let's deal with some of the burdensome things that's been in the way, that is in the way, to address these problems. And part of the problem is the pensions. Part of the problem is the collecting of the taxes. Part of the problem is the administrators. Part of the problems is the school districts. Part of the problems, there's lots of problems out there. Equal protection under the law. Equal assessments under the law. There's lots of things that we need to discuss. And I really want to take this opportunity to thank each and every last one of you for your attention. And it's truly been my pleasure to come out here to visit and to talk about what it is that we all need to talk about. And that is the problem with these taxes that's holding us all back. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. And again, a big, huge thanks to Rural King for putting this together for everybody. And y'all have a good night. Stay safe.
Oh, no. Only 2 more hours. Oh, no. Darren to take you home. You'll have the best breakfast you've ever had.
Police escort.
You'll have the fresh eggs, fresh fruit.
I wasn't expecting that.
Thank you. Can I have a hug? All
I'm
right.
probably doing my truck.
I get mine.
All right, bye-bye.